And we're live once again on another Tuesday, and I have a guest friend and mentor in the house today. I have John Espirian. Woo-hoo-hoo. And I'm so excited because we're kicking off the first episode. Well, actually, now it's the second episode of the now Easy Peasy Books podcast, which will come out after this live. And I couldn't have thought of a better guest to kind of celebrate this all with. So, John, before we get stuck in, can you please tell people who you are and what you do, and then we'll crack on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, Gillian. Yes, I'm John Espirian. I call myself the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd. I'm a former copywriter, now a LinkedIn consultant and a community manager. And I've also written a book called Content DNA. And Jill and I have known each other for many years now. And I'm just delighted to be the first guest on the new Easy Peasy Books podcast. Thanks for having me.
Woo, woo. So our topic today is crafting content DNA, a self-publishing journey. And just to let everybody know, so you don't have to take too much copious notes, that I have included an incredible link to, well, the link's not incredible, but I included a link to an incredible article, blog post that John Espirian wrote documenting his whole journey. So I tell people, please go to the post. It'll be in the show notes and you can click on that link and it goes through everything. And John, speaking of journeys, what a journey that was. But before we talk about your journey, can you just kind of sum up what content DNA is in, just kind of a minute? Like, just tell us what your book's about.
Yeah, it's really about discovering what your personal brand is all about, and defining what I call your shape of your business, your personal brand, what you want to put out into the world, and then finding a way to do that on a consistent basis so that people notice, remember, and ultimately prefer you. So it's the whole point of promoting your business in an ethical way, using something that people were really going to remember about you.
So can we kick it off with, let's kind of go back in time, and how did you even get the decision to make this book? So let's just start with that.
Well, I was a copywriter for 10 years, and I kept giving my clients the same kind of advice when they were talking about asking me for, to do some piece of writing or whatever. I'd always go back to, well, what do you want to be known for? How are we going to pitch that memorable thing? And I came up with all of this advice for all of these clients behind the scenes because I couldn't talk about it publicly because of non-disclosure. And I was finding myself, because I was saying the same things over and over again, that advice started moving into the posts that I was putting out on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And ultimately I thought, well, I've got 10 years worth of experience here. This is worthy of a book. And that was the seed of that idea.
That makes sense. And so did you always know, like when you were writing the book, did you know you were going to self-publish, or did you just write the book and say, I'll worry about the publishing once the book is written?
Well, I was in a fortunate position because in the sort of mid to late 2010s, I was the director, or one of the directors, of what was the Society for Editors and Proofreaders in the UK, the largest editorial society. So I knew all about the publishing process, editing, proofreading, typesetting, self-publishing. I kind of had some idea of what that process was. And I'd heard from other people who had struck deals with publishing houses that, they lost control. They didn't actually make as much money as they thought they would. And I just thought, well, I've got the capability to do this myself. And I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to my own words and my own personal brand. So I thought, why not? Why not build a little virtual team of people who can help me become my own temporary publishing house? And that's what I did.
And I love that you use the word team, because it really is a team. In your case, it was a village. There was so many different people. So can you just kind of quickly say all the different people that were involved in your book? And you don't have to list names if you don't want to. You can even just list the positions.
Yeah, because a lot of people just think, well, you just type out a load of words and then you press a button and then it becomes a book, and it's just nowhere near that easy. But you've got to first write your draft, and then you've got to have some people beta reading it to tell you whether it makes sense, if it's a cohesive argument. So you need a team of people to give you a sanity check over the thing, and then you sort of move into the professional world where, well, you're going to need someone to edit the content, to get rid of the fluff, and you need someone who's going to typeset that content into something that looks like a PDF, something that could be printed into a book. So you need a typesetter. Then you need someone to check mistakes again. So that would be a proofreader to sanity check that content. And then you're into the realms of, well, we need to produce an index for the book, a table of contents for the book, and then to turn that into something that could actually be printed or uploaded as a digital copy for an ebook. So you need to transform that content into something that would work on a platform like Amazon for, to supply for Kindle. And then, of course, once you've done all of that, you might want to get the thing independently printed, and so you can have some copies that you can sell yourself. And then you've got some marketing activities to do, as well as, in fact, and I've forgotten to mention things like the visuals. So, the book needs a cover. So you need some visual design. I chose to go with pure text inside my book, but a lot of people might want illustrations or color figures. So you've got to find a way of getting those maybe commissioned and integrated into your text. So you're right when you say there's a village. There's a lot of people, lots of specific skills. I don't think there's anyone out there who could do all of it to a really good standard. So you do need to call upon people, and that post that you're talking about was me documenting the process and saying who I used, and at what stage things happened, because you might think, well, there's a lot to take in there. What order do you do things in? That's important to know as well as factoring in how much it's all going to cost. So I've tried to set all of that out as it was when I published the book anyway.
That's good. And I know that I used your article religiously. It was just like, oh, because I think what happens is you go to publish a book and you realize there's so much that you don't know that you didn't even know. And so you're just like, oh, that's a thing. Like you have to make all these decisions every step of the way. And I love that you used beta readers. You call them beta readers. Beta in the States, we always have a long A, so it's beta readers here. So that's something that's really interesting. How did you choose that, and how did that actually? Did it work for you? Did you just take their comments, or was that really effective having that?
Yeah, it was a good idea. I mean, I already had my espresso mailing list. This is before the community came along, so I had an idea of who my most engaged audience were, and I knew that those people, have a good feel for what my writing style is like, the kind of things that I talk about. So those are the people who would not be afraid to give it to me straight. If I said something that doesn't make any sense, or if I've repeated myself unnecessarily, that kind of thing. I had a panel that I could approach to give me some ideas. So it wasn't anything like formal editing. That's where you would really employ a professional to do that, and I did. This is more about, is this a cogent argument? Have I put the cart before the horse? What have I left out? And I got loads of ideas and some corrections from that I managed to clean up before I ever sent the manuscript for editing. So actually, and those people were all volunteers. So that saved me a lot of time and heartache and money by getting that checking done. So yes, if you are going to write a book, I think it would be a very good idea to find your tribe of people who can give you the not just the people who are going to fluff your ego and say this is the best thing I've ever read, this is amazing. Just specifics like what things would you change here, what things don't make sense, look for improvements. I think that's a really valuable thing to do.
I like that. And I like that you use those readers to really enhance the book, figure out, is there holes, is there gaps, and, avoid things that maybe if it came out, you'd be like, oh, didn't everybody know that? No, there was, something that was missing, whatever. Because I know that a lot of people like to have advanced readers, which are different because those are people that you're hoping will read the book when it's kind of like still in the typesetting phase. It's already proofed, and you're hoping that they'll do reviews for you right away. And I know some people do that, but this is more content. These are true beta readers that are like giving you
yeah, absolutely right. I mean, if I were, I suppose, a bit more, I could say cynical or better prepared in terms of marketing, I could have done that phase where, you know, the book's almost ready to go and I would really love some reviews from people, and also follow it up with, you know, look, the book is releasing on this date. Please give me a 5-star review so that I can go straight to the top. I wasn't interested in any of that, because I thought if the book is good, it will find its way out into the world and people will leave genuine reviews without needing to be pressed by me saying, you've got to give it 5 stars. Yeah, I
On day
wasn't ever going
one.
to do any of that. So yes, I was focusing on just how can I make this book better. So earlier on, you know, getting the ideas in through the beta readers was valuable.
Mhm. So as you were, you know, going through your journey of the publishing, is there anything in particular that you'd say, you know, well, we haven't even talked about COVID, what COVID did to your
Right.
book,
Yeah.
because then there's that. But is there anything except for worldwide plagues that happened at the same time as your book launch? Is there anything that came up that you said, I had no idea I'd have to do this, and it was like surprised you?
Well, I didn't realize that the kind of ebook publishing would be quite as complex as it ended up being. So I needed to get help with doing that. And then you think it should be easy. You know, you've got a PDF, you can just upload it somewhere. And isn't that all? But actually, there's a bit more to it than that in terms of making something Kindle ready. And then Amazon have got a couple of back end systems that you would need to use. So that was a bit tricky. Also, and I don't know whether this is still true, so it might not be, but I found out that even though I recorded the audio version of my book, I found out that that couldn't come out until the paperback and ebook version had already been listed and published. Because I
Mm,
was thinking, well, we're just going to go live with everything on day one, and I couldn't do that. So that's another thing that no one had told me. Admittedly, we're going back a few years now, so it might well have changed. But those are things I was finding out at short notice, and then trying to scrabble and think, okay, what am I going to do about this?
mm,
So yeah, and another thing I found out, I suppose, as we went on, you get this back end interface where Amazon lets you set prices around the world, and you can kind of define what kind of what kind of profit margin you're trying to aim for, and these are things I'd never seen or even thought about, and I didn't know what was right to be charging for a book, because I think, well, it took me 2 years to make this. It's a lot of effort, but at the same time, people aren't going to spend £100 on a book. That's ridiculous. But so all of those things that I wasn't actually hadn't had any experience of were kind of, it was a sharp learning curve. Even with my editorial experience, it was still a sharp learning curve.
that's good. That's good. And I truly think that it's like you just don't know until you do things. And there is one interesting thing that I learned is specific to your country that we don't have here, and that in the UK, I believe you have to give a copy of your book. Is it to universities or to the British Library or something like that?
Yeah, it goes to the British Library, and that's mentioned in one of the very first pages of all books, which has got your kind of your copyright statement on it, and says that a copy of this will be found there. So yeah, there's lots of little twisty things that you just never know about until you actually do it for real. So and this is why it's good to work with professionals who've been there, seen it, done it, and it just that reduces the stress of the whole endeavor.
Obviously. Okay, well, let's pop over and see if we've got. I know we have lots of guests here today, so let's just kind of see who's in the house. So we have Jeff Young, and he says, I have to be here to see my two faves. Namaste. So it's always awesome when Jeff is jumping in and he's joining us from both YouTube and LinkedIn. So great to see you both here together again. We have Niraj, who's going to be coming on the show soon. And he is also going to be at Uplift Live. He's one of our speakers that is coming to Uplift Live. John, do you want to say anything special about Niraj? He says, big fan of John and his Content DNA book.
He's always been such a great supporter, and yes, he's going to be speaking about sales coaching best practice at Uplift Live. So really looking forward to seeing him. And I've published only one book. I think Niraj has managed 3. I don't know how he's managed to do that. It is really a lot of effort. So hat off to him.
I
But
love his
yeah,
books.
he's always been a great supporter.
Awesome. Awesome. And we have Mary Wu. I have that book and I review it on the regular. And it's true that there's some books like your book, John, I have read several times, and I read it all the way through once, and I loved it because I binged it. I couldn't, I kept saying, I'm just going to read this chapter, but then you always ended on a cliffhanger and I had to go to the next one and the next one. So you wrote it really, really well.
Well, that's
But
very
it's one of
kind.
those
Thank you.
books where you're welcome, where you kind of keep going back and saying, oh, I want to figure out, what's my mission statement, or, all these different
Mm.
things. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. I
You,
like that.
you've kind of reminded me of an important point. One of the reasons I've not done a book that was specifically dedicated to something like LinkedIn tips is because that might be out of date in 3 months.
Mm,
Whereas, some of the foundational stuff that's in Content DNA could be applicable regardless of what social media platform you use, because it's more foundational than that. It's all about your personal identity and what you want to be known for and how you're going to go about making yourself memorable. So most of those things are kind of timeless, I would like to think. Marketing in general doesn't change a whole lot. So that means that the book, even though it's now 4 years old, almost all of it is still relevant in the same way it was when it published.
exactly. And I know myself, I was, several years ago, I wanted to write a book about LinkedIn video marketing, and I chose not to do that. And I remember I was going to do a whole big thing on the LinkedIn cover story. Well, that's now the profile, which then got named the profile video and then got yanked. So it was just kind of like, do I really want to write about something that as soon as I hit publish, it's all changed, because then it's not relevant anymore. So evergreen is good. Evergreen is good. We have the lovely Tina here. Greetings from Brussels. So thanks for joining us today, Tina. We love Tina, and she loves Content DNAs too. You had actually a funny story about Tina, in that I remember you were trying to get your book to her. What was that story, John?
I think, yeah, we're in the height of COVID, and sending things around the world was really, really hard. I mean, I missed out on having an in-person book launch because everything was being cancelled. But just even getting books in the post and getting them sent around the world was really, really hard. So I think I had to take a couple of hops before the book eventually got to Tina. But she sent me more selfies of her holding the book than I think anyone else, and I think that book has been around the world with her while she's been wearing her It's Friday shirt. So she's in super fan territory. So thank you for your support, Tina.
I love that. I love that. And that's probably a good tip for anybody writing a book. Get selfies. Those selfies
Mm,
with the book, it's ask people to get those for you. And whether they put it on social media or they put it on Amazon, it really it just does your heart good to see your book in all these different places. So that's
yeah,
always
it
a
does.
great marketing tip.
It it does. I try to take that one level further, because some of the people said that they really loved the book so much that they'd be happy to go on video and read a
Mm,
little bit of it out. So I thought, the more of the book I give away, the more people will actually want to buy it so they can read the rest. So I've got like 30 odd people or so who just read, a couple of paragraphs here and there of different parts of the book, and I've put that into a video gallery. So those are things that you can do to show that people are really engaging with the content. So if you're writing a book, just think about gathering selfies, gathering videos if you can. It all really helps to spread the word.
I love that. And I remember in the content in the Espresso Plus group, who I'm a member of the community, that somebody actually started I believe it was Sandra Clark started a book group, and we met and talked about your book. And then you just said, well, I might as well come along if you're all talking about my book. And that was actually done by the members, not by you. And we just talked, we would just take it was like it was a read along. It was like a book club. And we just went through all the different chapters. And I thought that was really great. I love doing that. So these are always just great ideas to use your book moving forward. So I love that. So Jeff says, I go back to John's book consistently, and even more relevant 4 years later. So there, how about that? That's really good. We have Michelle Griffin. Such a timely and important topic. And first guest, Gillian with John Espirian. Absolutely. I am thrilled that he's here. And John's book, Content DNA, is a must read, must read. It really is. It really is amazing book. And Mary Wu says, I gave one of those 5-star reviews to Content DNA. So that's good. So Um, I did too. So, John, can we talk about the book reviews? Because that's a thing too, where it's like, do you encourage book reviews? Do
Mm.
you just whatever happens, happens? What can you say about the book reviews?
Yeah, I always try and point people towards, the fact that you can buy the book on Amazon and review it there, or if you even if you bought the book off me online or in person, you can still go and leave a review on Amazon. So there's a first point. You don't actually need to have bought a book from Amazon in order to go and leave a review there, but it's still valuable to leave the review because, frankly, that's where a lot of people are going to learn about what's moving and shaking in terms of books. I was never pushy without making those asks, but obviously the more high-rated reviews you got, the better. It's like having a long queue for a restaurant. It goes, well, something in here because loads of people are saying good things about it. So it is a good thing. I think actually I might mention in the book that there's some research that suggests that if you've got a sort of a rating of somewhere between 4.2 and 4.5 out of 5, that's kind of the really high trust zone. If every single person gives you a 5-star review, then that might make a few people scratch their heads and think he's put
Mm.
them up to this. And obviously, if loads of people are giving it bad reviews, then that's probably not a good sign. So, yeah, the more the better. I don't know where I'm up to now. It's probably close to about 100 reviews or so, which is a decent amount. It's nowhere near as many as some books have received. But I know from the amount of time and effort and expense that I put into creating the thing that it is a good product. So I'm pleased with it, and I rarely say that about anything I create. So regardless of what the reviews say, I'm happy with it.
That's great. And then, so you did the paperback first, right? So that was your first intention. I'm going to do the paperback. Then you decided, hey, I might as well do an ebook because I've done the paperback. So that was your next logical step. When did you make the decision that you wanted to do the audiobook?
Well, that only came because I was posting on LinkedIn and some people were saying in the comments, will there be an audio version? And I hadn't even considered that before. And then I started thinking, well, who am I going to hire to do that bit? Because you need to hire a professional voiceover, right?
Right.
But then it became clear that actually people wanted to hear the author,
Mm,
and I kind of feel the same. When I go to Audible, if I see someone else's voice, not the author's, that actually puts me off buying the thing at all.
mm,
So I thought, well, okay, I'll do it myself. I got some advice suggesting that, if I hired a studio, I could get it done in 2 or 3 days. Well, I had a recording set up at home. It ended up taking me a month to record. So my voice was shattered at the end of that. So it wasn't, it's no small feat, but I'm glad I did it because, again, there are some people who just don't have the time to sit down with a paperback, and they stare at a screen all day long and they don't want to sit there and read effectively a fancy PDF.
right. And
But they go running and cooking and driving and what have, and they want to listen to stuff. Although it was a lot of effort, it's an accessible way for some people to consume the content. So I'm glad I made the effort, and it ended up being good fun, but it was certainly a lot of effort to do it.
wow. Now, and I love Audible books because I love listening to books when I'm in cars, and I'm always traveling all over America, and you're on the road for a lot of hours. So listening to a book on tape, it's not really on tape; it's on your phone. But listening to that, I can absorb things and going for walks and whatever. So that's such a great way. So I'm just wondering for doing the audio files, did you go to a studio or sort of like in your closet in the house? Like what did you do to make those files?
No, I did it at home on my Mac with my microphone, using some Mac recording software, and some of the chapters, because you record it one chapter at a time to get each MP3 file. Some of those files ended up failing the Audible audio quality check, which has got
Mm,
quite a high standard in terms of uploads. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to re-record the whole chapter just because it's slightly not quite there. But I managed to find someone who's also referenced again in that article that you referred to earlier, who was able to do a little bit of post-processing audio editing for me for very, very quickly. And that meant that I got green ticks across the board and I didn't have to re-record anything. So again, I needed to use a professional just to give it that extra polish before it was ready. But it was, compared to everything else, a relatively small outlay and saved me a lot of time in the end. So these are all things that you need to keep in mind if you want to do a really polished job of getting things up to a certain standard. So I'm glad I did that. And yeah, that's I think the audiobook has been well received.
That's great. That's great. And I agree with you. I maybe for fiction books, I'm okay with actors, having voiceover authors for fiction books. That
Yeah.
works for me, especially if it's going to be a male and a female in different parts. But I think for a nonfiction book, I hear the author in my head when I'm reading it. And so I would naturally want to have the audio version be that author with me in the car. It totally makes sense to me. So I'm glad you did that. Can I just ask you, in terms of time, because I think time is always an important part of anything we do, is there anything in particular that you say throughout the whole self-publishing journey you didn't realize that one thing took so long? Is there one thing that, like, wow, that was a lot longer than I thought it would be?
Well, the editing and the proofreading, you're talking about a matter of only a few weeks here and there. So like editing was about 3 weeks, proofreading I think ended up being about 4 weeks. So that wasn't too bad. But what it meant is, because there had to be some typesetting in between, when you have a date of publication that you're aiming for, let's say you're aiming to publish something in December, don't think you can finish your book in November and have it out. That's not going to happen realistically, because you need to go through these other stages of having it edited, having it typeset, having it proofread. So that all adds time. So it's worth working out what those timescales are from your service providers, so you know when your drop dead date is in terms of, I've got to finish the manuscript by this date. And I was told, I was publishing April 2020, and I was told, look, if you haven't finished this manuscript by the start of December 2019, so like 5 months, you're not going to get it out on time. And that was a surprise. Even knowing the process, that was a bit of a surprise to me. And the other thing I would say as well is that I would have saved myself a lot more time in terms of building my manuscript if I had just sat down, cleared my schedule and thought, what are the chapters that are going to go into this book? A, B, C, D, and written those out and then written to that specification, instead of making loads of posts, gathering loads of ideas, and then trying to have this jigsaw puzzle of trying to fit it into some kind of order. I should have come up with the order first and then written to that specification. That would have saved me a lot of time.
I can see that. I can see that. Wow. Those are great lessons. So I love it. And is there, I believe there's another book in the works that's not coming soon, but in the works.
Well, sort of. I mean, I've written out, I've kind of used the same process of writing out loads of posts, writing out loads of comments, gathering loads of ideas for what would be a second book, which I'm going to call Relentlessly Helpful. And I've sat on that for a while, because really my day-to-day work with the Espresso Plus community and now the Uplift Live conference means that I've got very little time to devote to anything else. So that book may see the light of day. It might end up being something that I create a digital version of only for the Espresso Plus community, as a kind of fancy lead magnet, if you like, that you get a whole book by joining this community. So I might do that in the fullness of time. But I've got loads of those tips sitting in my drafts and thinking about the best way to express them. But again, I'm going to try and do something that's a bit more timeless, rather than something that's going to go out of date in a couple of months. It's something that really makes you think and gives you some good steer. So yeah, I'll have more updates for that for the community very soon.
I love that. I love that. Ooh, we're all standing by, standing by. Okay. Well, we've pretty much come to our end of our half an hour. Is there anything that you want to kind of leave us with, some wise words of wisdom today, John?
Just try and document as much of your processes as possible. Because a lot of people might think, well, I think I might have a book in me, but then they never actually do anything to make that a reality. So just go and look at what your content estate is. There's all the stuff that you've already put out, all the ideas that you've got, and try and formulate some kind of plan for what that would be like if you distilled it into a book. And you might not make a full-length book. I mean, mine's more than 200 pages long, but you might make something that ends up being an extended ebook that could really make a difference in your business. You know, it could be a touch point every time you speak to a new client to go, well, look here, I've released this digital book. Take a look. It makes being an author, just saying that name makes you sound more credible, and that could open the door to more business. So just start gathering your ideas and documenting your process, and you might be surprised at where that takes you.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you very much for being here today, John, and for trusting me to come on my show when it was just an idea in my head. I said, hey, I'm changing my podcast. Would you be a guest? And you said, of course. So you're just always great for experiments. So I love it. Thank you very much, John. And to everybody else, thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you back next week. And bye-bye, everybody. Take care.